Okay, you're ready.
Thank you. Okay, this is the Monday, June 6th, 2022 meeting of the Architectural Review Committee of the City of Palm Springs. Mr. Newell, please take roll call.
Member Thompson,
I'm here.
Member Walsh,
Here.
Member Paline is excused, Member McCoy,
Here.
Member Lockyer,
Here.
Member Dozy. Doesn't look like he's joined us just yet. Vice Chair Rotman,
Here.
Chair Jakeway.
Here,
We have quorum.
thank you. May we have a staff report, please, on the posting of the agenda?
Yes, Chair Jakeway and committee members, our agenda was posted on Wednesday, June 1st, 2022. Our meeting has been posted in accordance with state law.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody on the committee have any changes to the agenda? Do we have a motion to accept the agenda?
I so move.
Robert, second?
Second.
I'll second. Okay, second by John McCoy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, since this is a public meeting, audience members are permitted to comment on any issue that is within this committee's purview. Comments on an item appearing on today's agenda are made at the time that that item is presented. If somebody would like to speak on an item not on today's agenda, please make yourselves known. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Anybody in the waiting room that we know of, David?
Looks like everyone has joined the meeting, but if no one's requested directly to staff that they'd like to speak at this time. So if there's anyone who does wish to speak, I would request that you unmute your microphone and provide us your name.
Okay, let's move along. And if somebody identifies themselves, we can let them participate. The consent.
And for the record, looks like Member Dozy has joined the meeting.
Oh. Welcome, Tom.
Whoa.
Still getting set up. Okay, Tom, are you ready? Okay, Tom, are you there? We can't hear you. You're on mute. I think you can hear me, but I can't hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
There you go. Okay, thank you. The first item on today's agenda is a consent calendar, and that is the minutes of the March 7th and March 16th meeting. Are there any committee comments on the minutes of the meeting of March 7th? Okay, seeing none, let's move to the meeting of March 16th. I am going to recuse myself because I was not at that meeting. No, neither was John McCoy or Steve. Any comments or corrections from the other members of the committee on the minutes of March 16th? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve item number 1, the consent calendar, which is the minutes of March 17th and May 16th? Excuse me, March 7th and May 16th.
I'll move to approve.
Robert, in a second. Second from John Walsh. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we'll just get right into it. This is item number 2. Chris Pardo, owner of Sandfish Sushi, for a minor architectural application to construct a deck and storage pods to expand the outdoor dining area in the parking lot at 1556 North Palm Canyon Drive. Could we have a staff report, please?
Yes. All right. So the applicant is proposing to expand their outdoor dining area into the existing parking lot. For context, what you see circled in yellow is the Sandfish Sushi Restaurant. You could see towards the north is another building. So those two buildings actually share this parking lot. You could come in one way and leave the other and vice versa. Here's the site plan. So you have Sandfish Sushi with their existing outdoor dining and their proposed outdoor dining to the left. So you've got the proposed dining area occupying the entrance of part of that driveway into the parking lot. And you can see the pods and where the tables and the planters are going to be located as well. Here's the existing street view before the decking and the pods and the tables and chairs were all located in the parking lot. And this is what it looks like currently. You have the storage pods, the decking, and some nice planters located out as well. Here's a model of what it looks like essentially. So when the business is operating, the pods are required to be open. There will be seating inside the pods as well. Another function of the pods is that it blocks air. It blocks the wind from obstructing the dining experience. And when the restaurant is closed, the pods will be closed and tables and chairs will be stored away. This is just another view of the pods and the dining area. So they're proposing 20 feet wide storage pod containers, black steel planters to kind of delineate like the perimeter of the outdoor seating area. String lights will be used throughout the outdoor dining area and new decking as well. So here's just another photo of what it currently looks like with the landscaping and pods open. More views. Staff is recommending approval subject to the following conditions. We are recommending that they paint the storage pods to match the colors and overall theme of the primary restaurant. And we want them to alter the storage pods so that they appear as a more harmonious structure with the principal building. The applicant is available. I'm sorry, that concludes my report, and the applicant is available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Alex. Does anybody on the committee have questions for staff? Alex, can you go back to the overhead photograph that shows the existing parking? So it looks like they're eliminating about 5 parking spaces.
Yes.
Does that affect the quantity of parking that's required? Is any parking required for businesses here on North Palm Canyon?
Yes, so this area does have a set required parking. It does affect the parking count. For Sandfish Sushi, they were required and they were required to get a land use permit for a specific parking plan. So they can, basically it's a shared parking agreement with a business right across the street. So they have obtained that land use permit. We just have not issued it because we wanted to get this application approved first.
So now the people that come in the southern driveway has been blocked. So when people come in the northern parking, they're parking at an angle. Do they have to back out onto Palm Canyon Drive?
It does pose a parking issue.
So in effect, it's made the entire parking lot not usable. Because when I drove by, there was cones on it so that you couldn't get into it. Okay, any other questions from the committee? Robert?
Yeah, so obviously they constructed this, and then how did it come back to us? Did somebody report it, or?
So originally it was constructed during COVID when we were allowing parklets and outdoor dining to kind of expand. That's when it initially occurred. The business owner really enjoyed the idea of expanding his outdoor dining area so much that he's proposing it as a permanent structure.
Okay. And so when you go back to their proposed parking plan, if you could pull that up, this one. So they have their ADA space, and then they have the path of travel crossing a driveway, which of course ADA really frowns upon.
Mhm.
And so somebody who might be a customer of Sandfish, they not only have to cross the driveway once, but cross it twice to get to Sandfish. Is that right?
If they'd be parking within this parking lot, yes.
Yeah. And so who actually reviews the ADA parking? Because this does not comply with ADA at all.
Right, so that would be the building and safety department. I don't know if this would need to be reviewed by building and safety though.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Alex, is there any, where's the trash?
Ooh, that is a very good question. I believe it's right here. Can you see my mouse?
Oh, yes, okay. Any other
Oh,
questions?
Yeah, one last question.
Robert.
Is there some connection with the hotel or apartment building behind? I saw that there's some sort of knockbox and gate connecting the two properties.
So this is all one parcel, I believe. But it's like a multi-zoned parcel. That parcel, the one on the rear, it's accessed through the street behind. They don't share this parking lot with that.
Is it under the same ownership?
I can double check. I'm not too sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So quick question.
Mhm.
John, or was it John or Sean?
Sean speaking.
John,
Yeah, thanks.
go ahead, John.
Sorry, John, go ahead.
Okay.
No, that John, sorry.
Okay. The parking, is that an over-the-counter permit change or has Planning Commission reviewed that?
It's for the shared parking agreement.
Yes.
So that's over the counter. It's done with the land use permit. I anticipate that they will have to redo this entire parking lot to conform with what, if this does get approved. The turnaround, the radius and all that, they probably have to restripe. Would
Okay.
propose to be done over the counter.
Second question. So this came through during the COVID outdoor dining, and you say it's permanent. Is that forever, or is this a permanent as long as we are allowing outdoor dining under these COVID regulations?
So it is my understanding that the business owner wants to make this permanent forever. We could direct that question to the applicant.
I'm going to ask a question of a similar line of questioning, but it's more directed towards the city. And I'm just wondering, like, what's the overall plan here and appetite for outdoor dining within the city in general? And I ask that because, each week that we preside on this board, we review some other parklet or outdoor dining structure. And I don't know about oftentimes in this scenario, the application, or at least the subject of this particular project up for review, clearly says expand the outdoor dining area. And so I'm partially bringing this up about this project, but I'm also bringing this up about where are we going with the city's plans for expanding outdoor dining? Like, is COVID just here to stay? Palm Springs is going to become this outdoor, which is great if it is. It's going to become this outdoor dining town, and everyone's doubling their square footage and real estate with outdoor dining. In some cases, tripling. But I don't, like, what's the justification behind this? You buy real estate, you buy 1,000 square feet of real estate and you get all this space out here. Just not quite sure where are we going with this, and to what sacrifice? Like, there was a parking requirement for this, maybe, but we're not meeting it now. Maybe in the future, across the street, there's going to be some parking added. I'm also saying this, my own experience with where our office currently is in Palm Springs, above the Galleria building. You know, I literally need to take a bus to get to the office now because there's zero parking because of the restaurants along that street and the outdoor dining and the capacity of it. It's just really grown in magnitude, and there's never seems to be any parking anymore. Not on the street in front of the building. There's the city parking lot behind that building at 457 North Palm Canyon. It's 100% full until 10 o'clock at night. And so where do these people park? Does this guy need a place to park? And are these guys all parking in these back parking lots here? I mean, I'm looking at a life safety plan and somehow they get access, I think, through here, but they don't park there now. John just said, you know, he came to the restaurant and there was cones blocking this off and not even allowed in there. You can't even use these spots if you wanted to. I don't get it. I don't know where we're going with this.
John, this might be a good discussion to have with the meeting that David was mentioning, where we're going to have a joint meeting with the City Council and Planning Commission and to really ask for direction and tell them our concerns and our frustrations with it.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Was that announced in the first minute or two of tonight's?
You know what? It was announced before we started. David and I were just talking about
Gotcha.
things that are coming in. We'll hear about it at the end of the meeting.
Yeah. Well, Alex, you're off the hook.
But, and I can just add to what Ms. Perez has stated, that the city's zoning code does allow for a process to have a specific parking plan for commercial projects. So that's what they've submitted, and it's through the land use permit process. They have submitted a letter that they've secured parking offsite and on a property to the northwest. So they intend to provide or offset some of that parking demand on another property nearby. So we're still reviewing that, as she's noted, and something that, you know, we'll have to look at carefully based on the capacity that they're proposing, what's available at the offsite location, and how we manage parking accordingly. So we have to look at them each individually on a case-by-case basis, but certainly, as the chair has indicated, we can bring up this kind of larger discussion of parking downtown along Palm Canyon generally with the council.
Mm-hmm.
Not to beat a dead horse, but you know, they've got 69 feet 9 inches across that back parking lot. That's
Right.
more than enough area to do a double loaded parking aisle.
Right.
And you know, the two angled spaces with the ADA really complicates access in and out of this parking lot. So I'll bring it up with the applicant, but I really think there's a much better parking layout than what's being presented.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay, do we have any public comments from the audience? Not from the applicant, but is there anybody who wants to speak on this particular project? If so, identify yourself and you'll have 3 minutes. Okay, I put that out of order. I should have started with the applicant. If the applicant could come on to the meeting and give us a presentation of this project, please. Please give us your name.
Hi, everyone. Hi, my name is Roberto, project manager at Element Architecture. So let's see. The as Alex mentioned, this deck was built during COVID. The owner is seeking a permanent deck space as he wants to keep all the outdoor dining the way it's currently laid out right now. We understand all the parking issues that this implements. Therefore, we did went and have a parking agreement with the property up north on Canyon and Bisachino. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think we're providing more parking spots than what's required. And we also gave the hours of operation to Alex and David, and the hours of operation don't conflict with the existing tenants on that lot. So whenever Sandfish will be open, technically there's no one parking in that corner lot, so it will be utilized for this project. Well, as Alex said, it's the deck is about 1,200 square feet. It's composed of two storage mods. I think they're about 20 by 8. The main point of the mods is to serve as covered dining area for the users. As she's also pointed out, it helps out and blocks the wind tremendously. Also, in terms of storage, it also helps for the storage. So so after hours, everything will be in the storage units, and nothing will be outside and left exposed. Everything fits in them. I realize there's an issue being that it's not harmonious to the surroundings. This was a new comment. We didn't know about this, but we do have talks with the client, and he's all up for it. There's 3 ideas in mind. One of them is painting the containers to match the existing look of Sandfish. Another one is to do a rain screen with Ipe slats, so we can also match the look of Sandfish, the existing patio. And another idea was to do a vinyl wrap with a pattern that's currently used at Sandfish as well. I'll be happy to work any of those options with planning and come up with a solution. I think that's it. And if you have any questions, just let me know.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, any questions for the applicant?
Well, I do. So how do you justify the circulation in this parking lot getting backing out? And the second part is, how do you justify your ADA parking space layout?
The existing parking layout, I think, has to be redesigned. I think this project was approved to only have 4 parking spaces. So we probably have to redesign that. But like I mentioned before, we're providing more than needed on the corner lot. So I think that suffices that requirement.
Is there a parking tabulation that shows what was needed and what you provided?
Say that again, sorry?
Where's your parking tabulation that shows what was needed and what's been provided? I know you're saying that. I heard you say it twice now, but I don't see it.
I mean, the project was permitted back in 2017 or 2018. I mean, I'm sure the city has records of what it was allowed at that time. My understanding, there was only 4 parking spaces required. And then that's where we came up with the agreement.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
But I guess, Robert,
Yep.
just with what Robert's saying, like, I'm guessing that's for this building, but what about this guy? Where's he parked?
Yeah, that's a shared common space.
So this was part of the
I think
tabulation.
we also have approval from them. The same, I believe the same owner owns them.
But I don't know what any of that means, and that wasn't presented to us by staff here. That didn't say this guy said, I don't need any more parking.
Alex, do you recall this conversation? I think you asked for tenant approval of that adjacent space, and we provided a letter.
I think what Roberto is referring to is regarding the initial tenant improvement for Sandfish. Back in 2014,
Yes.
I believe the city added a provision to the land use permit section to allow for properties along Palm Canyon that are not part of planned developments that have other certain qualifying criteria to be basically adaptively reused to another use and not provide additional parking. And I'm not sure what was there previously, but if it's an intensification of the use, you generally would have to provide more parking. However, under the land use permit that was issued to the business subsequent to that code change, basically the non-conforming parking was allowed to remain.
So David, if the new provisions say that they're not required to provide additional parking, does it allow them to remove existing parking?
So that's where we get into the specific parking plan that he's referring to. So he's talking about the property to the northwest where they've got additional parking that has tenants that are not operating at the same time that they're operating Sandfish. So it's going to offset some parking to the offsite property.
So a question for Roberto, is there any signage on this property that tells people that they're allowed to park kitty corner across the street? And once you go over to that parking lot, is there any signage that says patrons of Sandfish are allowed to park there?
That I'm not aware of. I think this is recent. I don't know if when this was implemented during COVID, if parking was a requirement. Now that we're seeking a permanent deck, we would have to add signage so to let everyone know that there's additional parking at that corner.
Yeah, he's correct. We did not, when we were issuing land use permits for outdoor dining during COVID, we were not requiring additional offsite parking be provided, but because he's requiring the permanent deck, that's why we got into the conversation about providing parking on a nearby property. And as a part of the land use permit that would be processed, should this be approved, we would condition it that they notify customers via signage, via advertisements on their website or print materials that additional parking is located offsite.
So would that need to be made a part of a deed restriction or some sort of legal document so that that parking can't be removed if somebody changes ownership of that adjacent building?
Well, if there's a change in ownership, then we would process a new land use permit and that new owner would be subject to the same requirements.
Not a new owner of Sandfish building, but a new owner of the building where they're being allowed to park.
Oh, yeah. So for the other property, correct. We would, typically it can be done. Ultimately, we would have to get approval from the city attorney's office as to how that would be addressed. But yeah, there should be something on that property to notify future potential buyers.
Thank you. Any other questions of the applicant?
Yeah, I'm going to be a bulldog. So I think, the difference between when it was first approved in 2018 and now is that in 2018, it was a temporary measure addressing COVID issues. This is requesting a permanent installation for the deck. And I think as such, the parking needs to work as a permanent situation. I'm not going to argue whether they're adequately parked in terms of numbers, but I will argue that it is a very inefficient and unsafe parking layout. And as such, I think they should come in and restripe the parking lot so that it is a more efficient and safer layout. and also address the ADA parking in such a way that it actually complies with the American Disabilities Act. Because right now, what they've got is dangerous. And they're really opening up the owner of this property and Sandfish to a potential lawsuit if something were to happen. So for their own well-being, I think they really need to rethink how the ADA parking is handled and how the parking is laid out in this parking lot.
And Robert, you made a comment that the 69-foot dimension is enough for double loaded parking, which is
Yeah.
certainly true, but then they would have to change the driveway location. Instead of 2 driveways on either side, there'd have to be 1 in the middle, and that would
Yes,
then
exactly.
eliminate the pod. But I
Yeah, they
think
would come in the
addressed.
existing driveway to the north. If you remove the ADA space and the other space, a car could maneuver over and go into the center of that 69 feet and have parking on each side. That addresses the safety issue of getting in and out of the parking lot, but it doesn't really address how to handle the ADA space so that you get proper access back to the front door of this business or the adjacent business.
Right. Any other questions from the committee for the applicant? Okay, Roberto, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Committee comments?
I've said my piece.
Okay. I had a question for staff asking, in the city, would we allow somebody to buy a steel shed from Sears and Roebuck and put it in their property that's so visible from Palm Canyon Drive? And I'm pretty sure we wouldn't. And to me, that's what these are. They're just very basic steel buildings. I mean, they even look like they still have rust on them. I just think it's, as a temporary issue, I could see why the staff approved it. I just don't think as a permanent issue, it's appropriate for Palm Springs.
And that's why we conditioned it with those conditions, is to kind of that it resembles the principal building, but ultimately it is why we're bringing it to ARC, is to get your final.
And Robert mentioned 3 different opportunities for making these buildings more design appropriate for the existing building. And I think that this should be continued until they can come back with a specific opportunity that they want to suggest. Sean, were you wanting to talk or scratching your ear?
Scratching my head.
Okay. Anybody, any other comments from the committee?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, John Walsh.
it's a little bit difficult with this presentation to see beyond the parking and evaluate some of the aesthetics of the enclosures. It just seems as though that the parking functionality and success is an integral part of evaluating this. And I think they kind of need to get that done first.
Thank you. Other comments?
I have a comment.
Dan?
I was thinking the same thing that you thought when Roberto was talking about the 3 options that they were considering doing, is like, well, they need to come forward with those options. Not saying, oh, we could do this. I just think that what we have here looks like construction trailers and it's not very attractive. And some of the other things that he mentioned may be more appealing and would fit with the building better.
Can I speak? Sorry. We don't have the options here because we weren't aware of this comment. Like I said, when we submitted, this was not pointed out before. But I'll be happy to include options in the next meeting.
Thank you.
I would like to address that. I think the design team should select an option and present it rather than come back with 3 different options. You know, put together a full set of plans, show the parking requirements, as Sean pointed out, required, proposed, whatever signage they can do, but have a complete submittal with exactly the comments addressed and a selection for how these units will be aesthetically improved.
And I think as part of that resubmittal, there's no landscaping shown. I mean, the pots they have are handsome, but I think the parking lot doesn't comply with the shading requirement that the city has for parking areas. So that needs to be addressed as part of the redesign of that area.
Correct. They show some kind of rendering with a little tree or something, but yeah, bring a full package back and we can evaluate it properly.
Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
make a
John.
motion,
John.
make a motion to continue it with the emphasis to work on staff on resolution for a clear, understandable parking count and solution, as well as a very specific aesthetic solution to the enclosures that they would like to put up.
Okay, do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Dan Thompson, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. So we will move now to item number 3. Barrel Drive PS LLC for a major architectural review application to construct the 65,284 square foot self-storage facility on a 4.2 acre undeveloped parcel located at 900 North Farrell Drive. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes. So for context, this is the location of the proposed project. It is going to be surrounded by existing industrial buildings and development. You've got the DMV to the north, Hot Purple Energy to the south, and another storage facility, I believe it's Extra Space Storage, to the northeast, and residential to the west. So they will be occupying these, I believe they're 2 parcels. Eventually they'll become 1 parcel. So here's the existing street view from North Farrell Drive and Computer Way. And the other, the other existing street view from research. So the proposed use of this is a self-storage facility. It is permitted in this zone by right, so no additional applications are going to be required. This will be the view driving north from on Farrell. That self-storage sign is just so you can visualize that there will be a monument sign at that location. So here's an example or proposal of the east elevation, the west elevation inside the storage facility. In the south on Computer Way, and then the north facing the DMV, which is not visible from the public right away entirely. I did want to address the wall because it would be very prominent when driving on Farrell. So you've got a split face CMU champagne colored wall. It will be about 8 feet high with a cap on it and some of those glacier white pillars. And up close of the wall along Farrell, so it's not just one giant wall. It is broken up, so it does set back a foot every 8 feet, I believe. And there are oleanders planted on either side of that wall, so it does break up the monotony of it. So if you can see from here, you'll see when driving the wall and then a landscape portion blocked by the oleanders, which go up 15 feet high. And the purpose of this is to block the RV storage that is located directly behind. So it's not visible from the public right away at all. Here's the landscape plan. They are using desert appropriate landscape, and it is wrapping around portions of the north, all along Farrell Drive and the south as well. So those driving along Farrell should not be able to see the RV parking. And then here's just a close-up of the proposed landscape. View 1 is the entrance. It faces east. It's not visible from Farrell. It's visible from Research Drive. And that's where that's how you enter the site essentially. Staff is recommending approval subject to the conditions outlined in Exhibit A, and the applicant is available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee for staff?
I do.
Robert?
Yeah, Alex, so in the packet that was sent out, they did not wrap the landscaping around the north side. So is that something new?
Yes, so that's probably my mistake. They are going to be wrapping the landscape.
Okay. And then let me see if I can't really see. Were there any other changes to the landscaping?
Sorry, other than, additional landscaping proposed, the oleanders, I believe, to break up the wall. That's essentially it.
All right, thank you.
Alex, I'm reading the Planning Commission's comments. And they asked that to enhance the perimeter wall design along North Farrell, such as alternating recesses, raised planters, and or similar enhancements. I don't think a 1 foot setback is alternating recesses. Do we have a dimensioned plan that specifically shows what the wall will look like in plan, exactly where it is?
No.
Okay.
That's all I have for you. But no.
Yeah, I can't see any wall there. All I see is round circles.
Right. So the wall is very difficult to see. It is set back 1 foot, and the oleanders are placed behind and in front of it. So, but I see what you mean. It is difficult to pinpoint the wall.
Well, since they know that was one of the hot buttons for the Planning Commission, I think they need to provide us with a plan that's much more clear about the exact placement of this wall and really address that comment about maybe adding some raised planters or other design elements. That's just a comment. Any other comments, questions from the committee for staff?
Maybe.
Oh, was that Sean? Did you have something?
Yeah. So on that same wall, what is the height of that wall?
The wall will be 8 feet high.
Yeah. And does it really work with the oleander? See how the oleander on the detail you're showing there, see how it kind of encroaches where the wheel stops are?
Mm-hmm.
Like, does that even really work, or or do they need a bit more planter area?
I think they might need a little bit more planter area.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, how wide those planters are, because oleanders are more traditionally, they'll grow to a certain height, but they do want to spread wide. And it just doesn't look like there's enough space in there. And there's probably some better selections to get higher than the wall than the oleanders.
Tom, are you able to, I don't know if now's the time that you want to weigh in on that plant selection, but are you going to elaborate on that? Because I was curious about that myself and was going to ask.
Let's hold that till after our questions to staff, because I had the same. I'm going to really want to rely on Tom's expertise to give us some advice on that. A question I have for Alex, they say on the, maybe it's on this plan or the elevations, that there's an 8 foot high perimeter wall, but then with a 14 foot high hedge. Is there something that's written into our approvals and our conditions that would require that 14 foot high hedge to be provided? And at what point do they have to provide it? I mean, initially they're planting 5-gallon oleanders. Well, that's going to be a while before those are 14 feet high. And then is there a way that they can be required 10 years down the road if those things are not properly maintained, that they would be required to put in material that would give the 14-foot high screening.
We can alter the plan comment number 12 to state at the time of placement that they place.
And then a question, Alex, too, is as we're looking at this drawing, up at building 2 at the top, the dashed line showing the fire lane is right against the garage doors of the building, and same down at building 4. Reading through the fire department conditions, their condition number 12 says in private developments, fire lanes shall be not less than 24 feet in width with no parking on either side and shall be identified. So to me, that means there can be no parking in front of those drive-up units in building 2 or building 4 or building 3 where the fire lane goes through the middle. It seems like there's no place for the tenants to park, to unload, to get into their units.
I see what you mean, yes. Oh, does he mean permanent parking? We could elaborate that one with the fire department.
Yeah, we might need the applicant to describe how the circulation plan works for the customers as well.
Yeah, okay, well, I'll hold my questions then for parking for the applicant. Any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you, Alex. Is the applicant present? And could you please give us a presentation of the project? Give us your name, and you have 10 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chair Jakeway and fellow commissioners. Thank you for your time and your dedicated service to this community. And thanks, Alex, for the great presentation. My name is Eric Iguchi, and I am the project applicant. As staff mentioned, our project received Planning Commission approval on April 27th, subject to additional design conditions. Accordingly, our team has since made multiple changes to enhance the project aesthetic. Based upon commissioner comments and other projects that were reviewed before us, we are utilizing gravel mulch in lieu of decomposed granite in all parkway frontages to limit dust. Based upon thoughtful insight from Planning Commission, we have added Mexican fan palms to the plant palette and also eliminated 2 tree species that, in their experience, do not do well in Palm Springs. Those are Palo Verde and African sumac. Working with staff, we extended the enhanced landscaping around the northwestern corner of the property between us and the DMV. To address the perimeter wall design, each wall sections will be offset by a 1 foot to break up the monotony of the wall. Also, oleanders will be planted either in front of or behind the entire length of the perimeter wall to enhance the street scene and screen the tops of any buildings or recreational vehicles from public view. And finally, although monumentation signs will be submitted for review in a separate application, our conceptual monument sign has been reduced in scale and will be designed to blend in with the landscaping. With respect to the planter area that you addressed in your comments, we can easily push back the wheel stops to accommodate a larger planter area. Just maybe shame on us for not thinking about that during the architectural review design process, but that's something we can easily accommodate to allow the growth of all those oleanders. With respect to the design of the wall, we're happy to increase recesses or enhance planters. We were wary of a little bit of over designing. We thought that the enhancement of the design of the monotonous wall would be primarily mitigated through the addition of the oleanders, but happy to add raised planters along that wall as well. And with respect to the oleanders themselves, we're happy to accommodate either 10-gallon oleanders. It's pretty difficult to find an existing 15-foot high oleander plant, but we can also accommodate different types of plant material. Happy to do that as well. Myself or the project architect, Shal Vakili of KSP Architecture, and the project landscape architect, Ryan Martin of Emerald Design, are available to address any questions or concerns you may have as well, and take the design notes based upon your input tonight. Thanks again for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Eric. Committee members, questions for the applicant? Well, let me start with some of my questions about parking. The comment that I just made about the fire department not allowing any parking on the sides of that fire road. How will you address that? And the other question is this large building 1 that has all of those storage rooms. Where do people park when they want to unload their goods that they're going to carry into those rooms or wait to get goods that are coming out?
Conceptually, well, they will park, they will drop off their goods at the lobby and move their goods into the facility. Now, with respect to parking, accommodating specific parking stalls in front of each of the drive-up units would be onerous and also not in conformance with your development code, in my opinion. I wouldn't refer to people stopping in front of the unit and putting their goods into their unit as parking. It's just a function of how the business operates.
So where do they park when they want to unload their car? If they're not
They'll-
parking in front of the units?
They'll stop their car in front of the units. You know, in my experience, when I have a self-storage facility or my own self-storage unit, you know, I'm there for about 20 minutes to 30 minutes, dropping off or loading or unloading my car.
Okay.
So in my opinion, it's a bit onerous for us to accommodate parking in front of every single drive up, because those would be used maybe one, you know, each parking stall would theoretically be used once every, you know, month, theoretically.
How many storage units are inside of building number 1? Not the drive-up units, but the ones totally interior.
The storage units in building 1, you know, it's still conceptual. The interior floor plan layout is still conceptual. Shab, do you know how many storage units we have in this plan? I think it's around, Shab, I'd have to ask you to
Yes. I do not know the exact number offhand. I can look it up while you guys continue the discussion. If you give me a minute, I'll look it up.
Sure. It certainly looks like to me that there's more than 100 units. I got to think you're going to have a lot of cars wanting to show up on a Saturday morning and unload stuff to put into those units. And there needs to be a place for them to go without blocking the fire road. They cannot stop their car on the fire road. The fire department requires red curbs be painted all along both sides of those fire roads. So I don't see anywhere people can stop.
So this is a specific question we had to address based upon the airport land use compatibility zone. We are in compatibility zone B1, which is the most onerous compatibility zone, notwithstanding being on the actual runway itself, which is compatibility zone A. In order to meet airport land use compatibility, we did a survey of 4 different existing self-storage facilities of similar size. And one second. And over a 30-day period, at its peak, which was, I believe, Saturday, the most number of people on the property at any given time was 11 vehicles in 1 hour. So that was, to be specific. And this report should be, or could be a report, an exhibit to your ARC staff report, was on February 26th, from 5 to 6, there were 11 vehicles within that hour on the property. And that was the most number of vehicles in a 30-day period without any holidays.
But if the vehicles can't park on the fire road, I don't see where 11 vehicles can legally stop.
We have 11 parking stalls. I believe we have 5 out front and we have 4 in the bottom left corner.
Sure,
We
sure.
also have loading. We also have dedicated loading areas. But sorry to interject, Eric, but as Eric had mentioned, these are very short stint of time where customers come, grab a cart, unload, and get back go to their unit, and then go back to the car. So we don't consider that as permanent type of parking. It's a loading and unloading zone, and it's typically done. What we can do is stripe in front of the building 1. Building 2, those are all just drive ups. So they should be able to, for a short period of time, park in front of their unit.
Not legally. Okay, any other questions for the applicant? I have a question for the architect. On building 1, I can see on the roof plan the mechanical areas that are screened. On buildings 2, 3, and 4, I don't see any mechanical units. What's going to be the situation for those buildings?
They are unconditioned units.
Oh, okay.
So they're just like garages, like you would have at your house. Roll up door, have one light inside, and that's basically it.
Yep.
We condition the building 1 as is their interior units.
And then on the buildings, it's hard to see because the elevations are such small scale. Are there wall mounted drains coming off of the roof? Is that what those lines are that I'm seeing occasionally? Or how is the water from the roof getting down to the ground?
That has not worked out 100%. We either do it internally and pop it out in between the pilasters, between the units, or we bring it from the outside, downspouts and overflow scuppers.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, other questions? Before we get into, well, Tom, I think both Sean and I would love your expertise to talk about their plant material list and what gets to be a 14-foot high hedge and how big of planters are needed and a few things like that.
Great. You know, when I look at the plan, I think there's an opportunity to better utilize that 25-foot landscape buffer area. And within that, what I would envision is that they could use a variety of tree types, you know, that have different forms, some wide spreading canopies along with some more columnar or taller tree types. And just use that buffer to create, you know, the landscape buffer for the, you know, to screen the RVs. I don't see the purpose of the interior planter where the RVs are. It's going to take a long time, as you pointed out, for those oleanders to ever get above that wall. And maybe they could really focus, you know, utilizing the 25-foot buffer. And there are better selections. There's shrubs, you know, that are more prone to grow vertical than the oleanders are. You know, the oleanders are more bushy, more ornamental, flowering, but I think they could review the types of material that we typically use for screening these areas. But I think tree forms, you know, some taller trees, some lower trees. I mean, even if the tree started branching, you know, above the wall or at the top of the wall, would give us more screening, and then they could use the wall as a backdrop to other, you know, accent plants and create a nice visual that way, because the screening just needs to occur above the wall.
Tom, do you have any specific questions for the applicant?
I think, well, one of them was, you know, why they decided to try to create those planters on the backside of the wall. I know it may be to try to get the wall to disappear, but on the RV storage areas I visited, I know that they typically like to avoid having plant material just for maintenance purposes, you know, with inside the project.
Yeah,
And,
I can address that. One of the specific comments from Planning Commission was to have a monolithic screening, landscape screening above the 8-foot wall. We did not like the idea, the design aesthetic of a monolithic oleander screen along the entire wall, which is why we we accommodated a interior planner to do offsetting planting materials along the wall to break up the monotony of that wall. But you're right, we'd rather not have interior landscaping because of the additional costs for irrigation. But we think this is a better design aesthetic.
Yeah, and the other thing I was looking at, the spacing of the trees. I mean, I think you can really use, different tree forms again, to create that buffer and screening. Some that are more vertical in nature and some that are more wider and spreading could really help out, and also with an increased density, closer spacing of those.
Understood. I think we've got some great feedback on the tree types. If you had some insight on this meeting on the shrub types, that would be much appreciated, because I know this is something our team struggled with on determining what would be an appropriate screening material for Palm Springs.
Okay. Yeah, and there, I mean, even on the tree types, there's more vertical type trees that are in the acacia family. Out in that area, you are prone to a little bit more wind, so you can see, what's successful out there at some of the other facilities in that area. Shrub materials, I would look at some of the Prunus carolina that creates, grows more vertically. It doesn't get as large as the ficus or have the root problem that the ficus could have, but that's another one, and we just went by a project where they are close to 15 feet tall. It's taken a few years, but I think it's a combination of shrubs and tree forms in that 25-foot buffer that you could really use to your advantage.
Much appreciated. Those are great comments. Ryan from Emerald Design, did you have any thoughts or questions?
My only concern, hi everyone, first of all, my apologies. My only concern was the wildlife hazard management, making sure with that airport that's just adjacent to us that we were not creating any issues with wildlife and the habitat. At one point, we had a bioswale. We were required to remove some of the landscaping from in there, and some of the trees with their height and their ability to house habitat wildlife. That's a concern on our side too. We want to make sure that we're not intruding on that management program.
Understood.
Okay, Robert, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. I'm good. Thank you.
Anybody else? Sean?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you, Eric, and your crew for.
Tom,
Yeah.
I got a question.
Who's that? John McQuay.
John McCoy. So what are the hours of operation?
Sorry, let me look that up on our application.
Basically, what I'm getting at, what time do you close? I'm looking at your lighting plan, and it's been mentioned that you're on the industrial side of the street and you've got businesses around, but directly across the street you do have residential, and there are homes across the way that people can be sitting in their backyards or even looking at their windows, and you've got some lighting at 25 feet. Are those is the lighting going to be on 24 hours? Do you have a scheduled step down of quantity of lights? Right at the entry, you've got 9 lights, some on poles, some are wall mounted, but that's a very, very bright area. Is that going to be running, the entire time during dark, or is that just hours of operation?
Yeah, hours of operation, and I apologize, I don't have a specific time at all, but it'll hours of operation typically cease from 5 or 6 o'clock. These facilities do not run 24/7 out of security concerns. A lot of the existing residents in other facilities some of them could break into other units. So we've had to not operate these 24 hours. With respect to lighting, I suspect, admittedly, we're We don't have a lighting plan, a full lighting plan complete yet. That will be in the course of building construction documents, but I suspect that, security lighting for wall packs along the building will remain on 24 hours. Sufficient shading on any pole lighting would be accounted for on any pole lighting that could be beyond the wall. I'm assuming you're talking about potential pole lighting within the property.
Yeah, you've got a couple of specs in here, and your wall pack lights that are spec'd look reasonable, but the Cobra heads that are on the 25-foot poles, those could be rather intrusive to the neighbors.
Yeah, we're happy to
And
spec.
you're also, they're also running along the stretch where you have RV parking. So really, what's your goal of lighting along that area?
Yeah, we're happy to spec a different type of pole lighting there. That would be for security purposes. We can accommodate some sort of step down lighting plan there. I'm not too concerned about security there. I don't think anyone's going to run off with an RV at night. We're more concerned about folks breaking into the actual lockers at night.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'd like to see that be revisited.
And to play off John's comment a bit, specifically along Farrell, I would really change out the 25-foot high pole lights. And even if that meant you had to have a couple of more lights, if they were at 16 feet or something, I think that would be much preferred, because that is the one spot where you are adjacent to the residential neighborhoods.
Understood. We can accommodate that.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I've got.
Any other questions? We didn't hear from Sean. Do you have anything? A question for the applicant?
This question, I don't really know if it's for the applicant or back to staff, but a breakup in the parking also. So for on-site parking spaces, isn't there a limit to the number of spaces before a required island for landscape and shading is supposed to go into place? Likewise, are there any areas up against the building where there could be some landscape added directly against the building? I'm looking at the drive aisles here. I can't quite tell if this is a full hardscape plan. So anything in white is hardscape. Only the perimeter is landscaped.
That is correct. Are you referring to the landscape, the parking where the RVs are located? You're looking for some shading there?
Yeah, not just shade, but landscape to kind of break up the parking. So I feel like that's am I wrong on that? Because I know when we do layouts, there's a certain amount of spaces before we're required to put an island in and sacrifice a parking space, or maybe something narrower like a diamond shaped planter at the nose of the parking.
Right. David, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I was under the impression that those breakup points were for like the public portion of it, not the interior RV parking.
So based on the parking required for this facility, there's a very minimal parking requirement. That's typically because parking is usually near the location where the unit is, or temporarily, and then there's going to be permanent stalls near the main office. As far as the RV parking, we don't require that to have landscape because it is more of a storage type of use. So no, we don't typically have a planter in between those areas, as they're not commonly used on a temporary or short-term basis, as you might see with commercial properties.
And to that point, and this is the applicant, feel free to tell me to be quiet if I'm overreaching David or Alex or any of the commissioners, but that RV parking will be 100% controlled. The public will not be allowed to park there. That will be those spaces are leased out individually, so it's not public parking. With respect to landscaping and the interior, I guess it's a little bit tongue in cheek, but our clientele does not care about the interior aesthetics or the landscaping of the interior facility. And then with respect to landscaping adjacent to the drive up for the buildings, I've seen facilities where there is a small little planter, between roll-up doors, and those tend to die out pretty quickly because they become trash bins or dump areas for folks that utilize the drive ups.
Yeah, and I would just reiterate that that is correct. Typically, on other facilities that we have in this area, they don't generally have a lot of interior landscaping. So that's just an observation. If you look at an aerial of the surrounding self-storage facilities, there really isn't much interior landscaping.
Eric, is there a provision that prohibits owners from sleeping in or using their RV overnight while it's parked in this lot?
Certainly in their license agreement to rent the property, they are not allowed to sleep pursuant to our rental agreement or lease, which is really a license agreement. If we caught anybody living in the facility, our own security would attempt to address the issue, and often we have to call the police.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions from the committee for the applicant? Eric, thank you. Stay around. I'm sure other questions will come up as we have our discussion. Okay, committee discussion. Who has a comment or a question or a discussion point?
Well, couple of concerns. I can start.
Sure, thank you, Sean.
Yeah, so the someone brought up the roof drains. I know this has come up before as a question. They're currently called out as downspouts on the exterior of the building. At least that's how they're shown on the roof plan. So I didn't see that come up in planning commission's comments, at least not by quick glance, but I think that's something we could address here, is that we don't want that. They should be within the walls, and overflow and roof drain hidden within those walls. Yeah, John brought up some items about the lighting, and I'm curious about that. And I believe the answer was there wasn't a full lighting design with specifications, I think is what I heard in response to that item. So, I mean, maybe that can be addressed or deferred, or part of the requirements to submit that for review prior to final approval. Exterior lighting, I know that can get pretty hideous at night and be seen from all over the neighborhood, and it'd be something worth minimizing, in my opinion. Yeah, landscape, I mean, when I suggest landscape along the buildings, on the interior, to me, it's not for the clientele's enjoyment of a picnic area or something like that, but more of an enhancement of the architecture itself or the site from the exterior. It's difficult for me to tell from this plan, just like, in other words, I don't see a grading plan, so I can't quite tell the pad elevation in relation to maybe finished top of curb along the street. So I don't know how much higher the building sits up. My guess is we are going to see over these walls in quite a few areas, and it would be interesting to see some depth and layering of landscape, not just along the facade, but some along the building itself, in some places with trees or something like that, something hardier than a material that might die off if it were to get abused by people unloading and loading. So I'm empathetic to that, realizing that if people unloading and loading and dumping things and treading on plants could kill it, but maybe a substantial tree or two rather than 4 or 5 or 7 small shrubbery planters might be an enhancement. I think what I'm hearing about the wall along the street frontage on Farrell is that's getting a whole nother, that's going to get another pass. So I don't know how much more to, I guess I can weigh in on some comments on that. Now, what somebody, and it may have been you, Tom Dosey, that brought up maybe trying to avoid plants on the interior of that wall, which sounded interesting to me. I could almost visualize plants dying off or not being kept up on the interior of that wall, and cars pulling up to them all the time if there wasn't significant planter area between the nose of the parking and the plant material themselves. So I wonder how much enhancement that's really adding to the street frontage of this wall, and if maybe in lieu of the plants on the interior of that, or the frequency of them, that'd be something a bit more sporadic. But maybe something hardier also that could create a canopy and also help with some undulation and layering of the architecture and landscape materials of and around that wall along the along Farrell. Just wondering.
No, I agree with you, Sean. I think there's an opportunity to use that wall along Farrell. And if they, you know, aesthetically, along with the landscaping and create, you know, they've got some sporadic palm trees, but they could create, you know, groupings of palms. And the palm that they really should be using is not the Mexican fan palm, but the California fan palm, the Washingtonia foliifera. You know, it's the same ones that are on Palm Canyon, has a much heavier trunk. It doesn't grow as tall. The Mexican palms get very tall very quickly and could create more of a hazard, I guess, for the airport. But even some smaller ones, and if you did groupings of them at varying heights, as those grow up, they will do a good job of even help screening together. So yeah, that 25-foot buffer has a lot of potential. And I'd like to see them do like an elevation, you know, of the actual landscape, you know, with the wall in as a backdrop. I think it's a pretty easy.
And perhaps some RVs.
And I think it would be nice along that wall, if it's in these sections, that not every single section is split face Champagne CMU. Use some other CMU materials of different colors, different sizes or proportions, different grout patterns. Don't make it overly busy, but get a couple of different things going so it doesn't just seem like one long continuous fence. I think that would help a lot with the character of along Farrell Drive. And as far as Sean's comment about some landscaping on the interior, at the ends of each of the little wings of the buildings, there appears to be kind of a triangular shaped piece of land that's not used for parking or access to the units. And I think it would be great if just 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 of those could be landscaped with some sort of a some height in a tree or two, and just something to make the interior feel a little softer and a little more welcoming.
One more item there, Tom. You know, Chair Wormiak was questioning the height of the RVs in relationship to the height of the wall, I think. And so if I can just read that really quickly, Ms. Wormiak questioned the height of the RVs. The applicant responded the RV height is between 10 and 14 feet high. Ms. Wormiak went on to question whether grading could be lowered there, which sounds like a large feat and a lot of gymnastics. However, if you can picture an 8-foot wall and a continuous row of 10 to 14 foot high RV windshields, unless they're backed in and it's the rear of them, but I think it's got potential to also have a certain aesthetic to it that looks a bit like an RV dealership there. And so I'm wondering if you know, some more trees or maybe a large planter island or two to break up that sort of row there a bit might help. And including a different species that maybe Tom Dosey's recommending rather than an oleander that I think I haven't seen the oleander do so successfully out here. But is there some other hedge that might create something a bit more solid and hardy along there that would help screen those windshields?
And also, as you look at the site plan, the RV spots towards the northwest corner, some of those don't have to be right against the wall. They could be pulled into the property 5 or 6 feet and still be out of the fire lane and be able to break that continuous line of RVs along there. Let the RVs themselves create some of this staggering that we're talking about. Yeah, see, that shows an interesting, makes it much more interesting.
Mhm.
Where'd that plan go?
Yeah,
Alex,
there's a large setback.
I'm sorry.
where did this plan come from that's on the screen now? Because I haven't seen that before.
So this was the original site plan. But with the changes made to landscaping, it eventually morphed into this.
Huh. I mean, in the original plan, they actually had a decent area to plant with inside the wall.
And I don't see how landscaping in that 20-foot easement wouldn't affect at all the placement of the RVs. Just pulling the RVs forward didn't give them any more landscaping along the street. So I don't think that's a solution. I think this is a much better opportunity to, yeah, because like Tom is saying, that exactly, all that becomes a landscape area.
I love this tool.
You get to mark on other people's paper.
Yeah. Mhm.
Robert, were you saying something?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to get off the call. I have another Zoom call I've got to jump on.
Okay, any parting comments?
No, I think all the discussion so far has been, I would be in agreement with, so.
Okay,
Thank you. Sorry about that.
thank you, Robert. And we do still have a quorum without Robert joining us to finish. Who haven't we heard from? Dan, do you have any comments?
Really have anything different to add, so no.
Okay, thank you.
I do like the first floor plan or the first plot plan better with the RVs pulled back. I think that's a better fit for the project.
And the other thing that Wormiuk alluded to that I was always thinking about, we haven't seen a grading plan, but is there an option to lower the pad level where the RVs are parked so that on the interior face of the 8-foot wall, it would actually be 10 foot? If that portion of the, now I know that puts some pitches in there and there might be some drainage issues, but I certainly, if the applicant hasn't looked at that, I would encourage to see if there's anything that could be done. One thing we don't know is what the grade is along Farrell versus the grade along Research, and how the pad levels of the buildings are going to be situated. It looks from the photograph like the earth is several feet above the sidewalks on both sides of the street.
Yeah, Chair Jakeway, I would just comment that the commission contemplated that in their deliberations and discussion with the applicant. There's some issues with reducing the grade where RVs are parked, because to do that, you then have to deal with how the RVs get up that grade and onto the level portion of the driveway. In addition to drainage issues that they would have to mitigate. So ultimately, after discussion with the applicant and contemplating that, having that lower grade where the RVs are parked, they chose to really just address the issue through design enhancements along Farrell with the wall and planting.
David, was there any discussion, on that 25-foot buffer or even on this original plan to do some berming that would help get the landscape up even taller, especially along Farrell within that 25-foot area?
That's a great comment, Tom.
Really, it was left to the ARC to deal with the design improvements along Farrell. So ultimately, it is up to your purview.
Okay. No, I think that would greatly help, you know, along Farrell especially. Create some nice landforms there and get the trees up high and have an undulating landscape. Street frontage.
Yeah, you know, if you were to berm up and actually have the berm be supported by the wall, you have the opportunity that then portions of the wall could be taller. So you don't just have a straight 8-foot high line along the entire length of Farrell Drive. And that might be an interesting design issue to contemplate. And not change the grading behind the wall.
Correct.
Any other comments? Do we have a motion?
Chair, what I might suggest is it sounds like for the most part, the main issues here are relative to the landscaping. There's some comments about lighting as well as the downspouts being concealed. So that those are primarily the comments that staff has as the notes. So what we could do is have a subcommittee review the final landscape designs or work with the applicant on the landscape changes along Farrell. And then if the committee is comfortable, we can approve this and move it forward tonight.
David?
John Walsh.
I have one other point, and I'm kind of stuck on it. It's a functional issue, and I realize that these things are just designed down to a gnat's wing in terms of the dimensions and the things that you struggle with, but that fire lane conflict with no parking needs to be run by fire. If I'm just not a perfunctory level, but I mean, you look at this and you understand, I'm not buying it. I don't think it works.
Yeah, the fire department did review this before it went to planning commission. So they have recommended approval with those conditions, and they're aware of the kind of circumstances with this facility being, you know, they do have what looks like a 29 or 20, maybe a 30-foot wide space between the buildings.
Right.
Their minimum is usually 20 at the very least. So potentially if you have a car on one side, you still have enough space for an apparatus to get around it. And as I noted, it's not uncommon for these facilities to have temporary parking in these fire lanes. And you see that around the other facilities nearby this location.
Well, your point is well taken. If there is the space, then it works.
Though reading the fire department's specific requirement, it says no parking on either side. On either side, so not that you could alternate or anything. 24 feet in width with no parking on either side. And it should be identified as such.
Well, then the user has the risk of getting their vehicle towed, or I mean, that'll ultimately be something that they'll have to deal with as a part of managing the property.
I think that the issues of the appearance of the wall, the grading of the landscape, the type of landscape that's selected, the type of lighting that's provided, I think that's more than something that a subcommittee should review. I think that this should come back to the committee. What does the rest of the committee think?
Yeah, I'm in agreement.
Well, you and I would have been the subcommittee, so I think.
Right.
We have a motion. Sean, did you have another comment?
I was just agreeing with you too.
Okay. So do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to continue the project with the comments that have been mentioned to be addressed. David, do we need to go back over the list of comments or?
No, I think we have all of the comments. I would just ask the applicant if they have questions on specifics of your comments that they would like to get clarity on before you take action.
Thanks, David. I don't have any comments. I do appreciate the comments by ARC. I do like the clustering of the California fan palm. So I really appreciate those comments. I do want to ask our architect or landscape architect if they had any clarification comments.
I do not have any clarification.
I don't either.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion. Did we get a second?
Second,
Second from John McCoy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Eric and your team, thank you very much for the input you've given us about this, and we look forward to seeing your resubmittal. I think you've listened to us well, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's the end of our agenda. Mr. Newell, did you have some staff comments for us?
Yeah, just 2 items. So the first item is on June 21st, the City Council will be holding a joint meeting with all boards and commissions. So that will be an in-person meeting at the Convention Center. Just wanted to let you know that now so that you save the date. There will be dinner at 5 p.m. and then an agenda or business at 6 p.m. And it's really an opportunity for all boards and commissions to, present the council with what they've worked on in the past year. And I'll discuss that more with Tom as we kind of, move forward in that direction here next week or so. And so I think it's going to be a 5 or 10 minute presentation or, comment from each board. And then, it's really just an opportunity for council to interact with all the boards and commissions. So I just wanted to let you know you'll all receive an invite for that here shortly.
So to pick up on that, if any of the members of this committee have some comments or questions that you think would be important for us to raise or discuss with the council, please email me and let me know.
Well, just as forewarning, I'm going to be asking about the where the city direction and appetite's going for outdoor dining and expanding that. Evidently.
Yeah, I already wrote that down as a note. I totally agree with you, Sean. That's an important topic.
Yeah, extremely important. If you look at the footprint of what that outdoor eating area was doing, I mean, it's changing the climate of just even real estate development itself. You no longer look at buildings for their square footage and leasable space, but now all the outdoor area you can monopolize, and it's interesting, really interesting. A tiny little footprint of that building, and yet their dining area is
Looks like he has more square footage of dining outdoors. Than he does
there's more outside. Yeah. And where's that going? Kitchen space and sacrificing the parking, and this guy doesn't need parking land. But it just, like I said, that example of and now this is being really selfish, I'll admit, but at the Galleria building, I mean, I don't know if anyone's analyzed that parking or said, well, we don't need parking here because this business operates at a different time than when we're busy. But that, I think it's really taken into account all the other businesses that are affected by a lack of parking and now taking over street parking or availability of that, in that general vicinity. It's interesting.
Okay, well, we'll come up with some good comments.
Yeah.
David, did you say you had a second item?
And the second item is relative to a subcommittee to look at a design change on the facade of the Bode Hotel. So
Which hotel?
Bode Hotel, which is under construction across from the downtown parking garage. So I would solicit requests, or I would request volunteers, 2 volunteers if you.
Is it mostly architectural issue or landscape?
It's a design element on the front facade.
Well, I could certainly do that.
Okay.
John or Sean,
Sure,
architect?
I'll jump in on that.
Okay,
David, isn't it well under construction?
yeah, I think there's an issue with the material that was approved.
Oops.
They're changing it because
Yeah.
of that. So,
Well, we're getting this on a lot of our residential projects. So material just isn't available for months. So can we switch to something else? It's today's world.
Plan B.
Yeah.
that's all I have.
Any comments from the committee? Thank you all. Good to see you, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
See ya.
Thank you.
David, you'll get back to Sean and I about the subcommittee.
Yep, we'll shoot you an email.
Okay, thank you all. Good night.
Bye.
Good night. Thank you.
I know.